All right, this is Marc Sessler here. I'm talking to Conor Orr, fellow NFL writer. Conor, are you there?
I'm here. What's going on?
Where are you? Are you in your house?
Yeah, I'm in my home office here in lovely Denville, New Jersey.
Are you like what can you see out the window from where you are?
All right, we just had actually this pretty giant like swan sort of thing take off. I'm looking at Indian Lake, which is in my backyard, and uh, we got a couple pink flowers coming up. A deck that we put on a couple months ago. So yeah, it's like a little like hidden pond oasis sort of thing.
Well, I mean, on the weekends, do you just sit back there and down one beer after the next?
Yeah, we took like a 12 pack of Yingling down to our backyard the other day and just fished for like 7 hours. It was great. We caught three fish, so it was
Well,
pretty good evening.
that feels like shotgunned out of like the 1780s. It sounds amazing. I'm here in the urban sprawl in Los Angeles. Out the window here, there are no windows. In fact, the only window in this office that I've stolen from some coworker, I can just see men in cubicles pounding away at their work. So, quite a different setting. We don't know what this. We've decided we're going to do this in theory. What we said maybe once a week up until the Super Bowl.
Yeah, totally.
And we have to typically do it at a time when we'll tell our supervisor, David Elio, something very important has come up. It's a family issue. Please don't ask any questions. And then we'll go and record this for however long it takes.
And then when we sell this to like a large corporation and it's drained of its soul, like what generates all the interest in the first place, we'll just totally sell out and we'll move to like a sort of a joint oasis where we can build a real studio.
I think that sounds good. And that should happen very quickly once they start to listen to what we're doing here. So basically, we have no plan at all. We have a show with no plan. We're just going to ask each other a couple questions back and forth. I thought maybe I will ask you the first question. It can be about football. It can be about the bizarre world that I seem to think that you live in. The more that we get to know you, you're kind of a strange guy in a good way. So let's go right here. I'm gonna put a little bit of football in this. You and I have talked a lot about, our whole group has the Ryan brothers. Let's say that these guys, these two men, Rex Ryan and Rob Ryan, a lot of significant amount of free time at this point in their lives. They've been jettisoned out of any meaningful employment inside the league. Let's say they're coming over to your home for dinner, over to the house that you're in right now.
Wow.
I know that you are a cook. You love to cook. You've included it in some of our Thanksgiving and Christmas columns. What would you prepare for the Ryan brothers? What sort of food, courses, what sort of drinks, and maybe what sort of music would you put on in the background to entertain these two?
Are they coming over soon? Like, is it a summer sort of thing?
I think it would be. I think, right now especially, they can stretch their legs. They don't have to go to OTAs. There's no training camp. They're driving down from the Rex's house in Buffalo that he still has to sell, and they're coming right to your house, maybe this weekend.
I think I'd definitely go the barbecue route, just because it is the easiest to plan, sort of time wise, and then it also has the biggest yield. So, it's not as hard to impress. I feel like, but if you do it right, you could knock it out of the park. So if you have a good dry rub on like a large brisket or maybe a large rack of ribs or something like that, and then you could just spend the time while that's cooking to really sort of crush your sides, like your coleslaw, your cornbread, all that stuff. So I think that would be the food menu. And then drinks, I would go straight like Corona. Just really only give them one option, but sort of include the Corona maybe in the sauce that I make or something like that to just set up the whole flavor throughout the meal.
I love that. Would you be nervous at all to have the two of them in your home?
Totally. I think my wife would also be super mad at me. She'd be like, "Why didn't you tell me about this?" Because inevitably I'd forget, and I'd say that two former NFL coaches are coming over in 3 hours.
Two burly, white-haired twins who are going to eat a lot of food. So yeah, I think that would be concerning for her. Very good. Good answer.
I think my question for you is just thinking about the NFL. Like, this is a time of year that you and I often joke about because vacation time is either coming up or has just passed for the two of us. if the NFL vanishes tomorrow, what's your move? Where are you taking the family and going? What is your sort of plan B, I guess you could say?
Yeah, I mean, it would be a plan B because I would suddenly be without any sort of income. But I think it would be a massive downshift into a totally different type of life where I would maybe move back east where I have family who I see like for 3 days a year because we're out here in LA, and why would they come out here for more than that amount of time? And I think maybe like some sort of landscaping role.
Yeah.
Maybe when I'm actually a week or two into that, that would be awful. But like just something where I can start a business and and then I can pass it on to, if not my other sons, other people's sons and daughters could be part of the work crew, and I would just sort of oversee them through like Excel spreadsheets from my house while I do very little at that point. I would do very little and get deeply immersed in probably some hobbies, some of them non-healthy, some of them healthy.
Would you ever go fully off the grid? Like I'm watching a lot of shows now where people are purposely buying sort of off the grid properties. They're growing their own food. They're brewing their own alcohol. All this stuff on these plantation type places that are totally self-sustaining. Would you ever entertain something like that?
I definitely would, but just as your significant other would not be excited about the Ryans crashing the house, I'd have to explain that to my wife, who's very understanding, but that may be a bit beyond the realm of extremity. And then also two kids, and like, how do I school them? Am I able to school them, or would they turn into like wild ruffians? There would be a lot of X factors involved with that kind of a move, but it's attractive, absolutely.
Yeah, there's like some wild stories about kids that just sort of emerge from these places without an identity because they're born without social security numbers, any sort of identification. And so I think that might be it's scary, but also sort of like liberating a little bit,
It
right?
might
You're
be
just
great.
completely off the grid.
Yeah, and it's like, are they going to be sort of entitled preteens that think that everything revolves around them? Not if they're raised in a wilderness setting with essentially two other people. It's going to be a little different. So yeah, maybe it would be great. You're putting ideas into my mind. All right, here is one for you. I know that when we bring you on to the Around the NFL podcast, that your thing there is you bring on a gripe and you're upset. I'm not going to steal any material from that show, but I will ask this: whether it was, I don't know if it was today or yesterday or whenever. What is the last thing that made you steaming pissed? And did it involve one of your neighbors? Because that often seems to be a subplot.
Well, I should my new neighbors are amazing. A lot of my "or are you kidding me" moments came from neighbors at a place where we had moved from, where they felt it was just totally okay to just blare on the car horn at any hour of the day, like whether it be 6:30 in the morning or 9 o'clock at night, and that was like a totally fun thing for them to and their kids to do together. But I would say the last thing that really pissed me off was I was trying to put together or put back a railing that I had taken off of a set of stairs, and then I had just totally lost all the screws and hardware, had none of the proper tools to put it back on. And then like when that happens, when I reach peak anger, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll like kick something that I know that I can't break, but then it hurts me, or like I trip over it, and then it's just like a snowball scenario where all this pent up rage is just getting worse and worse because like I tried to kick something on the floor like a cinder block or something and then fell, and now I'm even more mad than I was at the beginning. So that's sort of like whenever the pressure mounts and the anger mounts, I always trip and fall somewhere. That's sort of my thing. I don't know where that comes from.
I mean, this feels like yet another scenario where the wife is in the other room asking, "What on earth is this person doing? What are they about?"
She works super hard. She goes to school at night, so thankfully a lot of stuff happens outside of her sort of viewpoint, because I wouldn't want her to be like totally bummed out with me.
Good job.
I think that's something that I try to do like off the grid a little bit.
I like that. That's good diplomacy. Good job by you.
What I want to ask you is, I love the just totally randomness of this, by the way. we had both talked about growing up as Browns fans. You obviously were one long before you went through. You at least had some good years. I started as a Browns fan in like 1999 when the
Oof.
franchise came around. I was like whatever 9 years old and looking for my first NFL team. So very different experiences. But I like that throughout your fan watching experience, and then when you delve into journalism experience, you sort of tried to carry that compassion, not just for the Browns though, but for any sort of beleaguered fan base. And does that kind of inform the way that you write, and does that help kind of have an understanding of maybe crappier situations or fans that are just used to this general malaise year after year?
Yeah, I mean, I think one dynamic is when I'm part of a fan base that's been through hell and Cleveland qualifies, and you play a team like the Jets or the Jaguars, I want to destroy them just as I want to see that team go down in flames because you want to somehow rise out of this. But I do think in general, because Cleveland is almost becoming one of these incredibly special situations. I don't know if special is the word. And for you, I don't understand how a 9-year-old, kids are attracted to winners and they're attracted to good times. I don't know what brought you into the fold in 1999 or kept you there. That's admirable. But for me, I feel like it's this idea that there will be this redemption story on the other end. It's getting a little long in the tooth at this point to believe in that, but I do think that the minute that I ditch them, they would get good, and I would be an embarrassment to my own family at that point, because I'd be like a Giants fan or a LA Rams fan, and having watched the Cleveland, at 8 in my 40s suddenly get good again. It's like, what did you just do with 3/4 of your life? So part of it is like this kind of journey through the desert, almost hoping to find something on the other side. It does inform, I think, what I write and my whole viewpoint of the NFL, because since working here, when we have to go review games every Sunday night, and almost every Sunday, when the focus comes on Cleveland and I'm asked out of the gate how I feel, it's not just, they're an 8-8 team and they're kind of hanging on the fringes. They have been ultra embarrassing, and they've had ultra embarrassing draft picks. You talk about the Josh Gordons, the Manziels, with the Brandon Whedons, the Trent Richardson thing, all this stuff. It's just one ugly scenario after the next. So you're kind of always on the defense, and I think it's probably made me unnecessarily grumpy at work. Like, I cannot stand watching Browns games on Sundays in this office, because it's just like you're in a sports bar where everyone is sort of on the other side. I used to go to this Browns bar in LA before I had to work on Sundays. And at least in that situation, everyone by Thanksgiving would totally bail on the idea of spending money to watch them play. But for the early part of the year, things aren't good, but you're all like commiserating together. It's like you're in a support group with no antidote to fix yourselves. But at least you were with your own type. But when you're out in the wild and everyone is just looking at the team that you love, and you remember when they were good and they were a proud team, and you remember all of that, and you believe it can come back, but it seems so unreal that it feels very vicious. So, I mean, and naturally, when you suddenly have to turn around and write about anything, and you're the same way. It's like it does, everything informs everything, and that's all I can explain about it. I think I often feel like I'm writing from the point of anger and disappointment, which is probably not very healthy at all.
Speaking of, you brought up your kids though a little bit, and I'd had this conversation a couple times on my end where I don't have kids yet, but in the near future, if that happens, I always wondered how I would kind of try to inform them or try to point them in the right direction as an NFL fan, and whether I want them to be Browns fans or because we live in New Jersey, if I want them to pick the Jets or the Giants, we can have more opportunities to go to games together and have them sort of have their team right in their backyard, which I never got the chance to really have. What way do you sort of lean with your kids, and as they get kind of more interested and involved in football? Do you want them to be Chargers or Rams fans, or do you want them on board with you and to be Browns fans?
Well, it's a great question, and it's definitely a conflict, because I am already at the point where my littler one, he loves sports, and he's really excited to go to a baseball game, and I absolutely cannot wait to take him to a Dodgers game. I never imagined him being a Dodgers fan, but that's how that organically happened. I wouldn't get in the way. They know that I'm a Browns fan, but they don't really know what that means historically at all. They certainly don't. And like my dad, for instance, when I became a Browns fan, we were living outside of New York City. We were living in Connecticut, and all we had were the Jets and Giants, not even the Patriots. So like everyone around me were Jets and Giants fans, and I think I kind of picked Cleveland because all these people have been football fans for a few years before me. And I said, I don't want to just do what they're doing. It wasn't like some rebellion, but I also just naturally fell for Cleveland, watching Bernie Kosar on a Monday night game and Ernest Biner back in like '86. And there was nothing that could have changed my decision. I don't know how it happened. It was like a crazy conversion in the middle of nowhere. And then it was really rough because you only get to see them back then 4 times a year. And so I put them all on VCR tapes and watch them over and over. But it was a full-blown obsession. So if that happened for one of my kids with another team, because I know how that is, I would never try to make them change. And I do get the dads say, like, no, you're going to be a Giants fan because I was. But the Browns are a little bit of a tough sell when you're living in LA. So I think it's just like how life happens. Like I want to let my kids follow what they really want to do for the most part. And then it happens and maybe it's not so easy. I would not be excited if they were Steelers fans. That is not going to happen.
Yeah.
What about you?
I don't know. I'm torn right now just because every time I go to cover a game, which I do often at MetLife Stadium, one of the things that really strikes me is that like that family who's had the season tickets for, like 15 years, and the dad and the son are like firing up the barbecue together and all that kind of stuff. Like some of my most memorable moments for me are like being able to go to tailgates with my parents. We all grew up huge Notre Dame fans, so whenever they play at MetLife Stadium, we all go together and do a big thing. And I was like, man, it would be so cool as growing up to have a kid to do that for him.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, if he decides, like a lot of little kids, for some reason, I always noted, or like the Dolphins, kind of. I think because of the logo or maybe the colors or something like that. And if all of a sudden this becomes a full blown Ryan Tannehill obsession with him, then I think I just have to ride it out. And we don't get the season tickets, but we see them anytime they come up and play.
Yeah, I think as a parent, I think you got to roll with the punches. So I like that. Let's see. Here we go. Last question for you. If we were to learn over the next year or two that an alien species is in contact with our planet, let's say they return to uncover like all the pyramids that have been here for thousands of years and unveil some massive secret, but like the whole Earth changes, would you continue to log on and file news reports about the Detroit Lions OTA action?
So in this scenario, we've learned that we're in contact with aliens. And what else? It's an impending. Is there any sort of impending?
I think there's a lot impending. It would just be like, okay, they're back here to do something with the pyramids. It's kind of like, oh, we don't quite know their intentions. They're a much more intelligent species than us, and a lot would be in flux. I mean, there would be a lot of mysteries, probably some chaos in the streets. Maybe not in some places. Maybe not at your lake. I don't know.
Yeah, we are a quiet place, and I think that might keep me coming back. And I will say this, like I really do love just like writing about football. So I think if I felt that there was some sort of impending sort of cataclysmic shift in the world's rotation or axis, or we were only going to have so much longer to live, I'd be like, well, I like doing this. What else am I going to do? Watch TV, or or you go full 180 and you become like a Grateful Dead devotee to these aliens, and you find a way to fly out there and just be front and center with them and just sort of eat it all up, mortgage the house, sell the house, collect all the money and just be there front and center for when that happens, and just assume that you're going to be able to witness the end of days.
I think for me, like I like the idea of continuing to do something, and maybe it would be football. I would probably ask permission to work remotely and not be in the middle of a major metropolitan scenario, and get out of that. But maybe I would become like a blogger for this whole thing, like attacking this with daily news updates, get a sponsor, have like a podcast about the whole thing that's happening to the planet, and maybe do a little football on the side.
I like that. See, I think the inclination is there is like people who write for a living to be like, I gotta see that, but also if you really just like what you're doing, like my blood pressure, except when I try to install railings and kick stuff, is like such an even level, and like the happiness level is so medium high to high that I'd be like, well, why should I risk that and maybe just hope they don't come here? Just hope they don't mess this up and like cut out my Wi-Fi so I can't do my job anymore.
I like that. Kind of ignore the massive earth changes coming your way.
Which is what I feel like I'm doing now in a large
That is
sense.
fair.
Like sort of just stay away from anything political in any sense and just sit here and just keep doing what I like to do, and hopefully when eventually you walk outside the sun is still shining. That's sort of the hope, right?
I think that's good.
My last question for you is, if you were given, I mean, whatever it takes now. So if you're handed several $billions, tax free, it's your money, you can do whatever you want with it. Do you feel an immediate responsibility to kind of give back to the universe, and whether that means taking that money and running for office, taking that money and dividing it up into thousands of charities or whatever, or do you pull the complete opposite go dark scenario and just buy an island in the Caymans somewhere and just never be heard from again?
I'd like to do kind of a little bit of both, where you could feel good about like sleeping at night because you helped, like maybe I'd help like 80 close friends, or I'd help family and help some people beyond, but then I would also save enough where like my family would safely be able to vanish completely onto an amazing like island and live there for the next 4,000 years if necessary. Like, I mean, a little bit of a mix. I don't think you need all that money, and I'd want to do something with it. That would be the gist. But at the same time, I would not allow all of it to go away, and then I'm still like, trying to figure out where rent and how to pay credit card bills the next month. I mean, I don't know where the money came from, if it was stolen or something, if it came to me through an illegal channel, which is very possible. I would definitely vanish. Let's put it that way. So it all depends on is it dirty money I'm getting out of the United States.
I would say it's a completely legal, tax-free gift from the universe. Like one day, it's like Monopoly. You just flip the card, and all of a sudden, you have $17 billion. In your
I think I would
account.
take my kid. We would just travel around the world for like the next 25, 30 years.
You would have no desire to, like, let's say we're in a really dicey spot 12 years from now, globally and especially in the country. You wouldn't feel any sort of muscle to be like, I have the money to take these people on. I could be president, and I could also become this great man in history. How do you balance that against just wanting ultimate relaxation and being able to wall yourself off from the rest of it?
I wouldn't want to be president, but I would definitely team up with someone who like was doing that. I think it'd be really fun to be like in a campaign like that to help with that kind of thing. But I myself think I would do a terrible job with president, because even I wouldn't want to even be a boss, anyone's boss, because I know that like my emotions go up and down all the time. Like, I think a good boss is like someone that's super even keel no matter what happens. And like, I am a bit of a wild card. I know that about myself at this point. So if I were running a nation, I think there would be issues there. So I would give that to someone else. Maybe, maybe Greg Rosenthal could run the country, and I could sit back and hope that he does a good job. Or David Ely.
David Ely would be good. Austin Knobloch would be good.
Austin would be our other editor here. Austin would be fantastic.
I would vote for either Austin or David or Greg. I would feel good about that. But I wouldn't discount your self-awareness, which you had just brought up. You said your limitations, which a lot of the people in charge of everything. I'm not talking about our bosses. Our bosses are awesome. But in the grand scheme of things in the world, self-awareness is a very rare trait. You shouldn't discount that.
Maybe like get into the cabinet, like a high-ranking position in the cabinet that you could leave without any issues at any moment if something more fun came up.
I like that, like Secretary of Agriculture.
Yeah, I mean, what are they doing? As far as we know. I mean, I don't know what you're doing. You're flying to farm fields and looking at the fields. We don't know. I know nothing about that position. It sounds low key. You'd be in charge of farmers. They seem like a nice group of people for the most part.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with that.
Well, all right. Well, so I think we've wrapped up our questions. Anything else you want to get to today?
I will just say, because you had said, this is just a very quick aside. I was listening to the Grateful Dead channel on Sirius the other day, and Al Franken was on, and he took over for for a day or whatever, took over the station, and you asked like what these people do, the Secretary of Agriculture, senators. He had described a day in office where he called the surviving members of the Grateful Dead just to ask them why they stopped playing Althea a certain way in the 80s, like just during like a totally random, like a Wednesday. That was Wednesday. Like I talked to Mickey Hart and Phil Lesh and just sort of picked their brains on this. So that's what they're doing, I think, is the answer to that question.
Yeah, I mean, you have access. Let's not act like if you're the Secretary of Agriculture, that you're going out to central Idaho and learning how to like hoe a field. You don't get down on the grassroots level, I would imagine, other than to simply do it on a ceremonial level to make it look like you have some sort of care in the matter.
Absolutely. Like I think you're just going there. Once you get there, there's some sort of secret access code to the rest of the universe. All these people are going to be fine for the rest of their lives, and you can just spend your time in there satisfying all of your life's curiosities. And if that happens to be agriculture, that's great. But if it's 60s rock, then that's what you got to take care of.
Sounds great. Tons of free time for those people. Not for us, though. We are probably on Ely's radar at this point. We've been gone for roughly 20-something minutes, and he's definitely looking for you. And I'm within 30 feet of him in the office, and behind a closed door. He's going to be wondering what's happening. So we should wrap this up, I would say.
Yeah, I have 11 missed messages from Dave right now, so I got to go take care of that.
All right, we will meet again. We don't know. I guess we'll do this. This is a Thursday. We'll see. This is unpredictable. We'll either the show never returns again or it returns weekly. It's really up to us.
Absolutely. So stay tuned or don't.
We will see you next time.